In the early Christianity, reincarnation was taught, and I'm quoting Origen. He's accepted as one of the fathers of early Christian church. By some inclination towards evil, certain spirit souls come into bodies, first of men, then, through their association with the irrational passions, after the allotted span of human life, they are changed into beasts, from which they sink to the level of plants. From this condition they rise again through the same stages and are restored to their heavenly place.
Origen, who was one of the founding fathers, as you said, of the Christian church, was actually declared a heretic.
Right, yeah.
And removed.
Yeah.
And all his teachings were thrown away. They say God, who is the supreme Father, who loves more than any earthly father could ever love, gives his child one chance. And the repercussion is eternal damnation.
Well, so first of all, I guess, I don't know, I just wanted to say that we're not trying to make enemies here. We're not trying to criticize anyone. And if, we're trying to give some explanations to people who are open to hearing them and hearing the truth. And so if you don't, I don't know, if you don't like what we're saying, that's up to you. You don't have to accept this. We're not trying to criticize any people. We're just trying to tell the truth as it is. So yeah.
Let's say shed some additional light on the subjects.
Yeah, that's true.
The more light you have on any object, the easier it is to see it. So, we're just trying to shed some additional light.
Yeah, exactly. So, basically, how it starts is, well, I don't know where to start really, but Jesus, well, we could go back to the history maybe and look at how reincarnation.
Well, let's just introduce what we're talking about.
Well, maybe that's a good point.
Reincarnation, and there's a general, let's say, thought or teaching that reincarnation doesn't exist, that there is no reincarnation. I mean, this is the general conclusion of the Christian theology. But the Vedas and the Bible itself actually indicates that reincarnation does occur. And if anyone doesn't know what reincarnation is, it means that right now we're present in this body, and we call the time period between entering the body and leaving the body as our life. So, according to the theory of reincarnation, before this life in this body, we, the spirit souls that we are, lived in a previous body, in a previous life, and one before that, etc., etc. And when we leave this body at death, we, the eternal spirit soul, will enter another material body and live a future life and one after that, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And this is, often referred to as the wheel of birth and death. Around and around, from one body, one life, to another, to another, to another. So that's the subject that we're going to look at today.
Right. And close related to that, or inseparable from that, is the topic of cause and effect, and which is also called karma in Eastern philosophies. So we're gonna kind of look into that as well and understand. Because obviously, if there's if you see an effect, then you know that there has been a cause there. But yeah, we're gonna explain that a bit more, I think, later, because Jesus refers to that cause and effect.
Right.
So in the early Christianity, it looks basically reincarnation was taught, and there was Origen, a Christian forefather who was, I think that was around like 200 years AD, and he had the view that souls existed before being born. And I'm reading here. He believed that in the end, all things, including the most wicked beings in the universe, will convert and return to God. Now, where his understanding of reincarnation, perhaps wasn't full, but he said, and I'm quoting Origen here, he's accepted as one of the fathers of early Christian church. And he said, by some inclination towards evil, certain spirit souls come into bodies, first of men, then through their association with the irrational passions, after the allotted span of human life, they are changed into beasts, from which they sink to the level of plants. From this condition they rise again through the same stages and are restored to their heavenly place. So, this is Origen, and basically, and you can fill the gaps, but like if I'm kind of skipping something here or if I'm misunderstanding something, but as I understood it, though, in around 300 years later or 400 years later, there was a meeting where the emperor, what was his name again? I wrote it down.
Justinian.
Aha, yes, exactly. And he was a Roman emperor that basically decided, as I understand it, that the emperor, nothing can be done in the church without the emperor's will and command. Like the emperor has the final word, and he believed in one single lifetime, and he believed that the church was the mediators of salvation for the people. Basically, that you could only go to heaven via the church, and so this was a powerful tool for controlling people. So he basically removed reincarnation from the Christian teachings around 550 AD. And I don't know if you want to say more about that, or but yeah,
that's just the facts.
That's facts, and so and then there, like as it happened, there was a few concepts that was introduced at this time, because if you remove reincarnation, it's hard to explain where you're from, why you're here, and where you're going. So they introduced a few concepts that were like new dogmas that Jesus never taught. For example, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but original sin, like Adam ate the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, and this sin is then passed on to us, and that's why we suffer, because of Adam's sin.
Yeah, so it's Adam's fault.
But
it's not Adam's fault; it's Eve's fault.
Oh yeah, that's exactly, because she was inducing.
Yeah, she influenced him to eat the forbidden fruit.
Yeah, and creation of the soul at the time of conception, which is not the reality, and Judgment Day. The one day the world will end and all the dead people will rise again and be judged by God. And also, like, another concept is eternal damnation. So if you didn't get the chance to this life, if you didn't take the chance in this life, you're eternally damned. You're either going to heaven eternally or hell eternally.
Right. And that's still taught today.
Right.
I mean, that's current.
It is. Yeah. Unfortunately.
And yeah, so the Vedas teach a different story.
Yeah.
They don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
And there's different places in the Bible where that's refuted as well.
Yeah.
And also at that time of Justinian, Origen, who was one of the founding fathers, as you said, of the Christian church, was actually declared a heretic.
Right. Yeah.
And removed.
Yeah.
And all his teachings were thrown away.
Yeah.
And so therefore it disappeared and you don't see it. But it was originally there. See, that whole teaching has been so changed by political means.
Yeah.
In other words, it didn't suit the policy, the agenda, at that time of whoever happened to be in control of ruling and changing things. And so they just changed it.
Yeah.
Whereas the Vedas are not like that. They have come down since time immemorial through a line of perfect masters. And no political influence has jumped in and changed it, as long as you stay in the disciplic line, which we talk about frequently. In other words, you may, once you go outside this line of perfect teachers, then who knows what you're going to get.
Yeah.
All kind of different philosophies,
Yeah.
supposedly, according to the Vedas. But if you stay in this pure lineage, it doesn't get changed, and it's not influenced by politics and this guy came into power and changed this and,
Yeah.
a new edition of the Bible kind of thing, Oh, we got a new edition of the Vedas now.
Yeah.
It's the modern edition.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. So that's important to understand.
And just to explain that, because someone's wondering, I mean, I've had the question a few times, like, for example, the Bhagavad Gita is basically the original verses there, spoken by God himself, and it's a purport or a commentary by a spiritual teacher who comes in the line of disciplic succession, like you say, and you can look at that line of spiritual teachers, you can make your own research, you can and it's also described how to know who is a spiritual teacher, so, and we talked about that before, and so that's how it's like, it's not just anyone who's commentary you're reading, but you make sure that you know that this is a bona fide commentary because of the spiritual line or lineage which is coming down from this person who is commenting on the words of God.
Right. So if you if you don't have that, then you just get a lot of opinions and ideas and changes according to the whims of whoever has the power to change it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we could.
But anyway, back to our subject, reincarnation.
Yeah.
So if we're using Jesus as the gold standard, if you will, of the teaching of Christianity, which of course he is, then there's different places in the Bible that indicates reincarnation was accepted at that time.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, there's one verse where one of Jesus' disciples asked him about a blind man.
Yeah.
And Jesus had healed this blind man. And so the disciple asked, was this man born blind? And he was a blind person from birth. Was he born blind because of his sins or the sins of his parents? In other words, that indicates that before he took birth as a blind person, he had lived before and committed sin, or he lived before and had parents who committed sin.
Right. Yep.
And as a result of the sinful activities of either him or his parents, he took birth as a blind man. So that was a past life, obviously. I mean, there's no other way to even interpret it.
That's John 9:2, by the way.
Oh, okay. And so, of course, Jesus being the spiritual master of his disciples, which means he corrects them or, instructs them or whatever.
Mm.
He didn't say, what are you talking about? There's no other
No.
life before this one. I
Exactly.
mean, what are you even talking about? He was born blind because of his sins or the sins of his parents.
Yeah.
He didn't say that. But if he was a spiritual master and that disciple was incorrect, he would have corrected him.
Exactly. Yeah.
But he didn't, and he said no, neither in this case. He was born, for the glorification of God. And you can read it, probably you have it right there, but that's just the general idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
And because Jesus healed this blind man, it glorified him and gave his, let's say, divinity or the obvious indication that he was not an ordinary person for everybody to see.
Yeah.
Oh, here's Jesus who healed a blind man.
Mm.
And he performed other miracles, for lame men to walk or Lazarus that came back from the dead, etc. So people would not just see him, oh, he's just another ordinary guy that's got a philosophy, but they see him as someone who was very special. And he had powers and abilities that everybody else lacked. So it made it so they listened to him more closely. See? So the true devotee of the Lord, due to his contact with the Lord, he does have access to all these abilities, mystic powers that they're referred to. He doesn't use them for his own self-aggrandizement. Whereas there's other yogis through austere practices and so on that may develop some mystic abilities as well, but they use it for their own upliftment, their own glorification.
Mm.
The devotee of God uses that ability only in special cases and for the glorification of God to show that, I am someone that is passing on this pure message and you can listen to me. So there's two different consciousnesses present here. One is, look at me, what I can do. I can levitate. I can walk on water. I can fly in the sky. I can do this and that, But the devotee of the Lord uses it only in his devotional service to God. So that's something to understand as well along the way.
And Jesus is a perfect example of that. So, yeah.
But anyway, that points to reincarnation.
Yeah.
That whole episode points to reincarnation.
Yeah. And I mean, I just, we don't have to go into depth, but of course, there was a reason why they remove it, but, I probably, it's got to do with that, people have many chances and they thought that people wouldn't take it seriously. Like, oh, I have another chance. If you misunderstand reincarnation, maybe that's how you can see it. Like, I don't need to go to church now because, next life I'll have another chance but yeah.
Yeah.
And so
the church lost power.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you must come and surrender and repent, et cetera, now.
Yeah.
Because you've only got one lifetime. And at the end of this lifetime, you're either going to go to heaven or hell. So you better surrender to the church, and etc.
Yes.
So they turned it into a fear-based philosophy.
Exactly.
You know?
That's
And they talk often about hell to make it so you don't want to go burn forever.
yeah.
So we better get it right with the Lord. We better surrender to Jesus. And with that comes, money and, big followings attract more people who come, on and on.
And but it's very, even, all the religions of the world teach that we're all children of God. But so what about animals? If you deny the existence of the individual soul in the animal body, what about them? Are they just machines? You can see that obviously someone is there, and obviously they too are children of God, that he wants to come back to him and gives the opportunity to come back to him, so just that's in relationship to that, like it makes sense. Yeah.
From personal experience, I know that most people who declare themselves to be Christians don't even think animals have souls.
Yeah, well.
Only humans have souls, and animals don't. In fact, I was at a event one time, and there was a person there that was representing a very large Christian organization, worldwide organization.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could see that at this event, there was this one guy who was in charge. And I went up to him and just engaged in conversation with him purposely. And along the way, I asked him, by the way, do you think animals have souls? And it's like he never even thought of it. It's like
really?
It was just a blind-side question.
Oh.
And so he almost had to stop and go like this, or, he just paused. And then he said, no, I don't think so.
Huh.
See? And that was his conclusion. He obviously was not taught. He's representing this worldwide organization. He obviously had never been taught.
Wow.
That animals have souls, that every living entity, whether it's in animals or plants or whatever, wherever there's life, there's a person, and a person is a soul, and all souls are the same, but just located in different bodies. Nobody even. So only humans have souls, So that's just because they have such limited information. And that's why they're only concerned about, the humans. Oh, let's do missionary work and go save humans.
Yeah.
While they kill cows and all kinds of animals along the way, just nonchalantly, doesn't matter, okay. I like it. I like steak. I like pigs. I like chickens. I like to eat. Not I like them, but I like them to eat, And so therefore, it's easy when you don't think that's anybody but just a cow, or that's just a pig, or that's just a chicken, But if you start thinking this is a person, then it's another whole category of involvement, and you got to be concerned a little more. So it's
You're eating your friends, so to speak. There's a song about this, like vegetable eater song, which is part of a children's stories. Anyway, they're saying that it's like you're eating your friends. But this was obviously not the teaching of or Origin, because who we referred to before, he said, we're in the human life, and then we're changed into beasts, and we sink to the level of plants, and then we can rise again and be restored to our heavenly place, to the spiritual world. If we choose to do so. When
yeah. So you go down and you come back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Well, that would be nice to explain actually how that works. But we also have a few other, quotes from Jesus. But maybe that, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
we
well,
could...
go ahead with some Jesus quotes.
Yeah. So I got the blind man. Well, Jesus also said that in Matthew 7:2, for in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So especially that last part, with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. In other words, whatever you send around comes back around, as they say. Whatever goes around comes back around. Like whatever you send out, it will come back.
Whatever you do, going to come back on you.
It's a cause and effect. Yeah, and there's of course the very famous. Where do I have that? The whatever. Yeah. This is in Galatians. Is that how you pronounce that? I'm really.
Yeah.
It's Galatians 6:7-9. It says, "Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Whatever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, capital S, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up."
Yeah. Karma, as you sow, so shall you reap.
Exactly.
And if you serve God, that's what he's saying. If you sow for the Spirit, then you reap eternal life.
Yeah.
And if you sow for the flesh, then you stay in the world of flesh.
And the wheel of birth and death, as you've referred to before.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, if you reap something, and obviously, if there's a person who's doing a lot of bad in this life, and he dies and he never gets the results, that's not that we want them to suffer, but it's just like, it's not fair, and that's not God's system. Like, you will, sooner or later, you will harvest what you sow. You will reap what you sow, sooner or later. And like the blind person, he was reaping something that he hadn't sown in this life because he was born blind. There was no time for him to, he was born in this, what they saw as a suffering condition, and like bad fruit. He was reaping bad fruit. So obviously he must have sown.
Right. But of course, that was a special case. Jesus said, in this case, neither one.
Right. But his disciples, like, that's what they assumed must have.
But that's what they were assuming.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's true. And Proverbs 26 says, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and a stone will come back on him who starts it rolling." Anyway, just to the same.
Yeah. And you think about it, it only makes sense. Reincarnation is the only teaching that makes sense from different angles. Number one, we're told in every true teaching that Jesus is the Father who loves all of his children. But yet, at the same time, they put forth this idea that God created a system where you have only one lifetime, and during that lifetime, if you don't get it right, then you go to hell and burn forever. You only get one chance. But no loving father in this world, earthly father that actually loves his child, will arrange it so his child only gets one chance at anything. Like the father tells the son, okay, don't do that again. If you do that again, this is going to happen. The son does it again. Okay, I told you, now this is your last chance. And he does it again. All right, I'm not going to give you but one more chance. Mm-hmm. In other words, he keeps giving the kid chances because he loves him. Mm-hmm. But they say God, who is the supreme father, who loves more than any earthly father could ever love, gives his child one chance. And the repercussion is eternal damnation, burning in hellfire forever. So that's completely defies the law of love. Nobody under the influence of love would create such a system. Yet they say God does. That doesn't make sense. Now, here's another point that's very interesting. It's known by everybody that the material world is a place of suffering. The Vedas say it, the Bible says it, everybody says it. And our real home is in the spiritual world, and we should go there. That's the only relief from this suffering of material life. Right?
Yeah.
But at the same breath, they say that God arranged it so you start in the material world. So you start in the place of suffering, and you have to get through that. And then if you get it right, then you can go to heaven, spiritual world, and be free of suffering. But God, who loves us again more than anyone else could ever, creates it so first you suffer, and then if you get it right, you can have relief from suffering. See, again, that's a contradiction.
Why would he make that like? Yeah, why would he make it like that? So that we first have to suffer.
He doesn't make it like that. That's just their teaching.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But if you think logically, it doesn't make sense.
No.
Why would the most loving person create a system? Okay, all you kids, first you suffer. Like, okay, all you guys go to prison and suffer prison life. And then if you're a good prisoner, we'll let you out, and then you can come and be free of suffering. See, that's just flawed. It's not true. Whereas the Vedas teach exactly the opposite. We were in the spiritual world. We became envious God. We did not want to serve him. The whole spiritual world is a world where every personality there is loving and serving God, and God is loving all of them. It's the world of love. But there's the tendency to be envious, see, because we have that freedom and that tendency. We're not going to go too deep here. So due to our enviousness of God being number one instead of myself, I want to be the enjoyer and the master and the Lord. He creates the material world for us to come and try to live out that fantasy. See, God gives us what we want. See, as man proposes, God disposes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if that's what you want, here's the material world. So you come into the material world and enter into this wheel of birth and death. Again and again and again, through various species, lifetime after lifetime, until in the human form of life, you start questioning why you're here, what is this all about? I want to be free of all this suffering. There must be a better place. All the kinds of questions that can arise from suffering. The answers are there. Jesus gave the answers.
Yeah.
All the great teachers give the answers. The Vedas give the answer. The Bible has the answers there if you can see it. Yeah. And then you start living a life that is in harmony with God's will, pleasing the Lord with your life, your devotion, your service, your desire to come to know and love him. And that qualifies you to go back home, because now you've got the consciousness that prevails in the spiritual world. You're not the rebel anymore. See? So therefore, now you've qualified. You come back home. But that makes sense.
Yeah, and it starts with like asking the question. I mean, and then if you just accept, if you don't ask that question, and if you're not promoted to ask the question, how does this all come to be? Where do I come from? But you're only taught that, well, God made it this way, so we're suffering. And by the way, that's a very unfortunate situation, because if you're suffering, which we will be in this material world, you will be blaming him because it was his fault, because he put you here in the first place. So it's
and he created the world, and the world is full of suffering.
Exactly. So you become angry at him, and it like disencourages your inquisitiveness and investigating further into the subject, if like to the questions that you're referring to now and saying like, where did this come from? Where who am I? Why am I here? And where? It's like,
yeah. And another point, if we're eternal spirit souls, which we are,
yeah,
how did we start here?
yeah,
I mean, what was before this? If we're eternal, that means there was no beginning. So where was myself, the eternal person I am, before I started life in this material world?
yeah,
I had to be somewhere
Yeah.
if I'm eternal.
yeah. That's true. And
So
Christianity
I
does
couldn't
teach.
have started
Yeah,
my existence in the material world. See? So if you start really looking at what is being taught, it's just like, come on, it's not just not logically possible. What you're saying just doesn't work. Whereas the truth is, yeah, we're eternal. We were in the spiritual world. We came here, and we can stay here forever if we choose to.
Mhm.
There's no time limit. Eternity doesn't run out of time.
Mm.
So in the Vedas, it's called Nityabhata or Nityasiddha. Nityabhata are those souls who are eternally conditioned. Nityasiddha, those who are eternally liberated. Why eternally? Because we have the opportunity to be in this material world eternally, if that's what we choose. Like I say, we won't run out of time. See, some people think it's just a matter of time. Okay, you're on the wheel of birth and death, and I've heard this from so-called yogis and teachers who supposedly are some authority. Okay, you're on the wheel of birth and death for 15 lifetimes, and then you go back. Or 25. I heard somebody say 108. In other words, it's just an automatic number of cycles, and then it's over.
Yeah.
But no, that takes away all the responsibility from the individual person.
And the freedom, which God would never take away.
So,
Yeah.
all these things that are taught are just incorrect. That's why you have to have the Vedas, you have to have the perfect teachers, you have to have this disciplic line so things don't get changed.
Yeah. But I mean, just one question that came up in relationship to that, like, because Origen obviously believed, as I understand, that like all things, like including the most wicked people and what appears as most evil people, in the end will convert and return to God. But I guess what you're saying is that that's not necessarily true, because you if you choose to, you can really just stay here forever if you never make the active choice of wanting to serve God.
Well, yeah, that's right. You can. It's not just an automatic period of time and then you go back. It's not like a prison sentence that we have, in the modern day prison systems. Okay, you're sentenced to 20 years for this crime. And after 20 years, you get out. But it's not like that. You see, as long as you want to stay in this prison and act like that as the criminal, then you'll stay here.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And you have to understand that, like, saying that just like everything goes closer to God, everything is just like becomes better and better, and everyone will eventually come to God. It like the problem with that, it takes away the freedom. Because I used to think like that before I learned, the truth. Just like I used to think like that everything would just like gradually move closer, but it takes away the freedom.
Yeah.
Of the spirit soul. Yeah.
So he gave us the freedom to come here. He gives us the freedom to stay here. And he gives us the freedom to go back.
Right.
Free all the way along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but he does even gives us even the tools of, like, a part of the Vedas is like how to live here comfortably and enjoy your senses in the best way. Like, he gives us, even for those who want to do that, want to stay here, he gives them the opportunity to stay here in the most comfortable way.
That's right.
Even that. And of course he gives us the tools of how to get home to him.
But the unique thing about that system you're talking about, the karma kanda section of the Vedas, is there's a lot of rules and regulations and sacrifices and penances that are required to be performed in order to get the good fruit from your activities of doing this.
Right.
And that's where the enjoyment comes from. So to be able to achieve this, you have to be willing to follow some rules and some regulations and give up some things, engage in some austerities and penances to get your rewards in the higher heavenly planets or a good birth in your next life or whatever.
Yeah.
So because you're following the rules of the Vedas, which are God's rules, because he's the source of the Vedas, that's a little bit purifying anyway. Because you're not just doing exactly what you want to do any way you want to do it. You're listening to a higher authority to tell you, okay, you can't do this, you must do this in this way, and don't do that. So you're surrendering to the Supreme Lord to a degree. It's motivated by the desire for some fruit that you're going to enjoy, but nonetheless, it's purifying.
Right.
And gradually, this purification brings you to a higher level of consciousness. And your motivation changes. And it's less about me and my enjoying the material world and more about, wanting to please the Lord and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So the Vedas are so perfectly designed that just following the Vedas for whatever motivation you may have is purifying. Gradually, it's much slower, but it's still purifying. But if you throw away all of the rules and regulations and guidelines from the Lord, from the Vedas, from the Bible, from all the sources, the spiritual teachers and so on, well, then there's nowhere to go but down, 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 down. And more contamination.
Yeah. And then in Matthew 25:46, that's why it says, there's different places where people are saying that reincarnation is not part of Christianity. And one of their verses that they're using for their argument is this one where it says, "And these will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life." But again, it's not eternal. It is eternal because they choose it, but it can stop if they choose something else. But if they keep choosing, if status quo remains, it will be eternal. Like that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So, but maybe we could just look briefly into like how karma then links to this and how karma works and how karma is like deciding where you're gonna reincarnate or how, and as we spoke about the animals, like how the whole system then works.
Well, karma is one of the laws of material nature that govern us, and they have the power. We don't. It's just like the law of gravity on planet Earth. I mean, we're subject to that law. And you can believe it, you cannot believe it, it doesn't matter. If you climb to the top of a building and jump off, the law of gravity will slam you on the ground. See? It's not dependent on our belief. So one of those laws is the law of karma. And karma, the word karma actually means action. So it's the law of action. And all spirit souls are active by nature. If you look at any place there's a soul's presence, even in a tree, there's a lot of activity going on. So, according to the law of karma, if the activity I perform affects the life of another living entity in a negative way, if I cause them some pain, suffering, hardship, death, I'm responsible for that. And so coming back to me in the future will be pain, suffering, hardship, and death. As you sow, so shall you reap. And that's known as bad karma. Bad action, bad results, bad karma. And notice I'm saying living entity here. If my actions affect the life of another living entity in a negative way, not just humans. So that means all life forms.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm responsible for their pain, suffering, whatever happens to them. So that's bad karma. If my activity affects the life of another living entity in a positive way, I do good things, charity work, welfare work. I take care of a sick animal. I help an old lady, whatever. That's good action, which will bring about rewards. In the future, good things will come to me. Good action, good results, good karma. So we go through our whole life creating karma, some good, some bad. We come to the end of our life with our karmic picture. And that means when I leave this body, I have to take another material body to get the results of my actions, either good or bad, even if it's all good karma. And I've got nothing but rewards coming back, and that's not a reality. It's just a theoretical idea. Then it means I have to take another body to get those rewards. So it keeps me on the wheel of birth and death. As long as I have karma, when I leave my body, it will necessitate that I take another birth in a human or other body. So some karma will put me in a human body. Some karma will put me in an animal body. Some karma will put me in a plant body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why we see so much difference just at birth in the humans. Some are blind, like the person we just were talking about. Some are perfectly healthy. Some are sick. Some are rich. Some are poor. Some are born in a country where there's nothing but hell. Somalia, for instance. Some are born in a very affluent country, Norway, etc. In other words, it's so much variation just according to birth.
Yeah.
You say, well, why? Is it luck of the draw? Why did this guy get born in a rich family in Norway and this guy was born in this horrible condition in Somalia? It's karma. That's what made it happen. And why some are born in animal bodies of all varieties, and some are born in aquatic bodies, and some are born in plant bodies. It's all karma. It's all a result of their activity. And that's just at birth. And then throughout the life, so many things happen.
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's kind of feels like an idea of destiny. Like, but how about disease or premature death or,
But is it premature? Who says it's premature?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah.
Actually, the Vedas teach that when we're born, we have a certain amount of breaths that we're allotted. And when we use up those breaths, then we leave. And, I don't know how many breaths I had when I was born. And that's why the yogis, through pranayama and so on, can suspend their breath for long periods of time. So if I've got 100 breaths and I breathe one time a year, then I'll live 100 years long. But if I got 100 breaths and I leave and I breathe 100 times a day, then I got 1 day to live. So the whole system is very, very intricately designed And that's why, like I say, some yogis live hundreds of years because they can control their breath. And so on and so on and so on.
But
go ahead.
well, I mean, there must be something that interferes with that then, because I guess an animal, for example, a cow, he was supposed to live for a certain number of years, and then you kill him, you interfere with his allotted time that he's supposed to be in that body. I mean, you see what I mean? So like,
yeah, so you've disrupted it, but then you create a lot of karma too.
Yeah.
And that means that cow has to come back into a cow body again. If he was supposed to live in that cow body for 50 years, and cows don't live that long, 15 years, let's say.
Yeah.
And you kill that cow for veal at 1 year, whatever the time is they kill these young cows because it's tender, then that cow has to come back and live out its term. So you've disrupted the spiritual evolution, and you get karma for that. And on and on it goes. We can't try to figure out every little detail because it's so intertwined.
Yeah.
If we just look at the general concept, that's about as best we can do because it's so individual for each case. And you don't know how many lifetimes ago something happened that makes it so this had to happen now.
No. That's people, true.
You can just go crazy with that.
You can't like wrap your head around it. That's exactly.
But we just got to know that karma's at play.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
And due to what we do now, we're going to pay or receive rewards or whatever it is in the future. Yeah. And some of that's indicated in the Vedas and some's not. Like I say, it's so, complex. Mm. But anyway, if we engage in service to the Lord, favorable service according to the Vedas and the scripture, the Bible, if it's, those parts that are correct and under the guidance of a spiritual master and so on, then we can transcend all of these limitations. And we don't want to get too much into this because it gets very involved, and time is flying. But we can maybe touch it another time.
Yeah, but the idea is that neither good nor bad karma is really good because we come back to here and we stay in this wheel of birth and death. We come back to somehow into the material world to either enjoy or suffer. And the point is to get out from this wheel of birth and death.
So let's talk about that next time.
Yeah. That's good. That's good.
How to get off the wheel.
Yes. That's very true. This first episode, we see that that's a reality. And the second I think that's to give it the proper explanations that the proper time and Yeah, I agree.
Right.
That's nice. There was one thing that I wrote down that we could mention that I didn't say, and this was about John the Baptist. I guess you read about it also. That, I can mention this briefly. It's another, just a proof of reincarnation being taught, because there was a prophecy that Elijah the prophet, he was going to come and prepare for Jesus' coming, like set the stage and everything. But and he left the earth. I think there was on a chariot or a burning chariot. Anyways, he wasn't present at the time, like before Jesus. But the disciples of Jesus knew basically that someone would come and prepare for Jesus' coming, and so Jesus' disciples, they asked him, "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" And then Jesus answered and said to them, "Indeed, Elijah is coming first and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah has come already, and they did they did not know him, but did to him whatever they wished. And then it says, then the disciples understood that he spoke of them of John the Baptist. That's Matthew 17, text 10 to 13.
Yeah.
So he said that basically...
Yeah, so Elijah came as John the Baptist.
Yeah. He said that Elijah's already come, you know. And then they understood it was John the Baptist. Yeah. That's what I do. So let's chant. Or do you want to say something? Final words.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Om Hari Om today. I'm wearing the hat
The Om Hari Om hat.
to let people be able to read it.
Exactly. If you're watching YouTube.
Om Hari Om. Om Hari Om. Om Hari Om. Om Hari Om. Om Hare 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 Om. Hare Om. Om Hare Hare Om. Hey. Hare Om. 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 Om Hare Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo.
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo. Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo. Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo.
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo,
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo. Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo.
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Hare Harebo.
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo. Harebo, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Harebo.
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo,
Haribo, Nitai Gaur, Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo.
Haribo,
Nitai Go, Harebo.
Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Harebo.
Haribo,
Nitai Go, Harebo.
Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Nitai Go, Harebo.
Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Nitai Go, Harebo.
Nitai Gaur, Haribo.
Om Hare Om. Harebo.
Om Hare Om.
Om Hare Om.
Om Hare
Harebo.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to the next discussion, the next part. We can go in more
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well,
Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us
Yeah.
once again.
thank you for listening in, and do share it. I mean, you never know who might be interested, and some of our episodes are more, some are more easy to digest, some are more to digest, and so if you're tuning in, I'm sure you have friends or people around you, or if you're having meditation classes, maybe you have someone coming to your classes that would perhaps be interested. So at least let people know that we're here.
Yeah.
So
And remember, if you got questions, just let us know.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So until next time,
Hadi.
chant the holy names.
Haribo. Yeah. Thank you. Velike.
Namaste.
Namaste. Haribo.